everybody. Welcome in to the Great Scott Show on a Wednesday. Jack Betch coming up at 8:30. Luke Johnson at 8. Coach Broadhead in about 30 or 35 minutes. Right now, Louisiana Raging Cajun head coach, Louisiana Raging Cajun analyst, former coach, former player, Gerald Broussard joining us as he munches on what apparently is some delicious breakfast. I think we're all a little jealous. Good morning, G. What's happening?
No, we got a few folks coming over to the office this morning, so we're going to have some bacon on the griddle and biscuits in the oven, some scrambled eggs cooking, so it's going to be a good thing.
You get a good greasy griddle. I think the key is like you cook the bacon on the griddle first, and then you just cook everything else with the grease that's left from it. And man, oh man,
you know you're right now.
I mean, it doesn't matter. The thing about it is like you could just need to like wake up and start your day with some good protein and like feel good. It'll take care of that. You could wake up hungover. It'll take care of that. I mean, it's multifaceted. You know, it's a very talented breakfast there, G. It can do a lot of different things for you, and all of them are good.
And then also kind of shock your cholesterol in the place.
No, we're not worried about that today. Yeah, you know, just take some cholesterol medicine or something. All right, let's talk about a number of things, G. I appreciate it. Gerald, NJ Walker, and Cody Juneau have it for you Friday on the call. Louisiana versus Houston at the Radiant Technologies Independence Bowl. 2 o'clock kickoff, noon pregame with Steve Peliquin and Richie Falgu this Friday right here on 103.3 The Goat, simulcast on 1420, as well as airing on Hot 107.9. Before we get into the game, Gerald, a couple of things. Franco Harris passed away last night, and I Franco was the Steelers dynasty was ahead of my time. But I've heard about Franco Harris pretty much my entire life. I've obviously, seen the video and read about the Immaculate Reception, and the fact that the Steelers hadn't even won a playoff game for like the 40-year history of the franchise before that play is pretty crazy. And I know they didn't win the Super Bowl that year. That was the 72 Dolphins. But it was kind of the first thing, really, that you could talk about, well, they drafted Bradshaw. I get it. But that's like the first play, the first game that really launched that Steelers dynasty of the 70s. And, it's 2 days, he dies 2 days before the 50th anniversary of that play, 3 days before they were going to retire his jersey in Pittsburgh, when they're playing the Raiders this weekend. And you spent a lot of time for Pittsburgh for work. You watched the Steelers back in the 70s, man. When you hear Franco Harris, I mean, what comes to your mind?
Yeah, and Scott was a Raider fan back then, so that kind of was hard to swallow a little bit, especially that play. And I remember that play as a little kid sitting in the living room watching it, just couldn't believe. I mean, you didn't have instant replay, so you didn't know how it was going to come about, but they kept raising their hands, and I kept saying it's not so. But, we were, as a Raider fan, and it sounds different, I did not despise the Steelers because of Terry Bradshaw being a Louisiana guy, Mel Blount being a Louisiana guy. I was a fat guy in training, so I was ready for, Mike Webster and people like that, Mean Joe Green and all that. So they had such a unique cast of characters that they were rivals, but I just didn't hate them. And that play was so unique. And look, if you didn't like Rocky Flyer, you kind of had a problem, So all of that being said is that it's just, I didn't realize until you told me right before we came on that he had passed. And my last memory of him was coming out of the Pittsburgh airport and seeing the statue of him with the Immaculate Reception there that they depict. And I sent a picture to Stevie P, and I told him I'm stripping that thing loose. I was trying to knock the ball loose from him right there at the airport.
Yeah, may he rest in peace, and thoughts and prayers to his family. And he's an all-time great for sure. Gerald Broussard, our guest. All right, G, it's National Signing Day today. I know we've had this conversation before, but oddly enough, I think I have a take that, as usual, is going to take me a little while to explain, but as social media has just launched and gotten, obviously more and more prevalent in the last 10 years, oddly enough, despite that, and I know it's very much, a lot of self-promotion, and whether it be from players who are committing or decommitting or transfer portal, or whether it be teams and all, I get that it's signing day is a very big part of that. And yet, with the early signing period, which hadn't been around for that long, I actually think because of that, even with social media exploding the way it has, the way the single national signing day, the way it used to be, that Wednesday in February, the Wednesday before the Super Bowl, I think there was more hoopla then than there is now, even with all of the social media stuff. The early signing day, which is a good thing, has kind of it put a big dent in the national media coverage of it, and I know, look, I'm not trying to say it's not a big thing. It is, and you still have your stars and your rankings and all that. But I think that, and now with the transfer portal, it's recruiting is important. It's the lifeblood of the program. But as far as just today goes, I feel like there's not as much hoopla as there was with today just 5, 6, 7 years ago. Am I off base there?
No, you're not. And I go back to signing in December when there were 2 signing dates, but only one counted as a national letter. One was a conference letter in December, and then one was a national letter after. Now I think that the February date, I used to think, man, that would be a national holiday. Because it was so long you waited, so much stuff you went through with it and all that kind of stuff to get to it. But now it drags. It almost drags on to get to February because of how recruiting starts so early. You have all your summer stuff going. A lot of people are committed early. Then you're getting the flip commitments, and then you can validate stuff in December. Used to, you could sign junior college guys in December. Now it's high school and everything. So it's not as big a deal because of the multiple dates and because of how recruiting carries on for so long now.
When a day like today happens, how much are you following any of it, to be honest?
I'm not. I'm just waiting on it.
It's just
I used to, and look, I used to be one of those guys that, well, you remember this guy when we talked about it before. When I was coaching, we would go there, we'd clean up the complex, we'd get the grass all cut, we'd get everything prettied up with people coming in and out. We'd make boards, waiting on the fax machine to come in. We'd have breakfast and invite the boosters to come in and out all day to see who signed. It was a big deal. It's just not. And it's disappointing.
You welcome them. You celebrate a job done, the coaches anyway. Celebrate the job done, but, if you're playing in a bowl game in a few days, you don't really have time to do that. But, some guys are starting to come in. Cajuns just announced a number of them. It's, just past 7, so a lot are going to come through. And with the transfer portal, you don't know how long these guys are going to go. I mean, look last year at Texas A&M. I mean, how much was everyone talking about that recruiting class and being ranked number 1 and all this stuff? And then Nick Saban said they bought it. And then Jimbo got mad. And then they started cutting wrestling promos. And everyone just forgot what the argument even was to begin with. It was at the end of the day, folks forget what all the hoopla was about. And that was them having the best recruiting class. And it didn't seem to do them any good on the field this past year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is I think back in the day, though, Scott, when you looked at it, we all fought to get to that day and to get everybody in, but it was just names on the board. It was just, but it was, as you said, the culmination of everything, and the focus of the day was on the pieces of paper that went on the wall. I think that now with Cajuns at bowl week and with everybody practicing, and there's so much more focus going on the playoffs. And the other thing about it is that are you just renting a player? Now, I saw where J.T. Daniels is now going to Rice.
Yeah, fourth school.
He's on his fourth school.
Yeah.
And, I know you've got Jack Bash coming in and to see, and as soon as I saw that he was not going to be at LSU, I heard a lot of people talking. I said, dude, TCU is just a fit for that guy. I mean, it's just a fit. And then I'm kind of anxious to see how he does there. But in looking at that, I sit there and I'm watching, Montrell Carter play at Florida, and I see that Saibo, declared for the draft. He's going to be a first-round draft choice. The Cajuns have never had a first-round draft choice. Well, he's a guy that wasn't highly recruited. Came in here, and Rob Sale put a lot of time into him, was a 2-year starter for us in here, and then he goes to U of F, and now he's coming out early and going to be a first-round draft choice. And he's still not a Cajun doing it. So it's just changed with that. And this time of the year, to me, is bowl season. It's not recruiting. And maybe that's why I'm not as focused,
The timing of it, for sure. It doesn't get sort of the singular day where everyone's talking about it and, ESPNU's all over the place. The timing of it has something to do with it, for sure, because it's just it's a busy time. And yet, I think for a Group of 5 program, they all seem to prefer it. I mean, every coach will tell you they prefer the early signing, and that's when they get most of the guys in. And there's always a few holdovers, and then you have the next signing day. But I think particularly for a Group of 5 team, the coaches have always said they prefer that. Why do you think that is, G?
Well, I think it cleans things up. There's not the hesitation of, is a P5 school really recruiting that guy? They got to declare. I know there was a guy. I want to say his name was Kenny Mixon from Pineville. Played at LSU. Kenny took 5 official visits, none to LSU. I went to his house on a recruiting visit and was sitting there and visited with him and his mom. And I left Coach Stokely in the room with his mom, and went and he was one of them saying, "Hey, show me your room." So we go in his room and I'm looking, and he had all his recruiting material on his nightstand, and he had the LSU media guide or whatever they sent him, and our stuff was sitting there on top, which I'm sure he had planned that, but the LSU guide was sitting there, and Scott, it was rifled through. You could tell. I mean, it was beat up and worn out and stuff like that, and I'm thinking, well, they're not even recruiting this guy, but he's all over their media guide. Well, they called the night before signing, and I think Kenny had actually committed to Louisiana Tech. We weren't going to get him either, but they called the night before signing, and they being LSU and offered him, and he committed without a visit. And, if you can declare that in December as opposed to in February, then it helps the G5 schools either move on or realize, hey, we got this guy, that the P5 schools aren't going to be on them. And, it's not about the ones that you recruit, Scott. It's about the ones you get. I think that was one thing that I always, when Coach Tommy Tate, who's over at Turlins now, when we were at McNeese, we never cared about who we lost. We just didn't. I mean, we cared about who we got and just focused on that. I've been to other places where, let's go through all this, the conference, who signed where in the conference. Why did Scott Prather sign with South Alabama instead of the Cajuns? Who recruited him? Why didn't we get him? And all, who cares? You're wasting effort on that. Whereas, just the sooner you can get your guys, the better it is. And I think that an early signing date declares that makes everybody show their hands quicker.
Gerald Broussard, our guest. 103.3 The GOAT simulcast on 1420. I'm Scott Prather. Independence Bowl coming up on Friday, G, and one that I was talking to our guy James Butler the other day, and trying to go in a locker room and what it means to a player when in today's day and age a player opts out of a bowl game or a player that is going to get drafted opts into a bowl game and what it says to the locker room. And he's like, look, if I was a player, I would understand either way, and part of me would, if a guy decides to stay, I would be like thinking, man, I'm worried. I don't want you to lose money. And I said, well, James, back when you played, if you had been, a projected draft pick, would you still have played in that last New Orleans Bowl? He said, oh yeah, no doubt. So there seems to be sort of an understanding, and yet when you have guys like a Chris Smith and a Zion Hill-Green that say, I'm playing in this thing, do you think that means more to the coaches or the other players?
I think it means more to the coaches than anything. I think it's something that the coaches have had to do to kind of not recruit their player, but keep their players eligible. You know, you see a guy like Michael Jefferson, and what are the benefits for Michael to play in this game? Michael knows where he is, and he's got some opportunities to play in some all-star games. His biggest game of the year for his own personal well-doing was the Florida State game. To be able to expose himself against that kind of talent and to have the opportunities. The thing is that, you know, you look, it's going to be 20 degrees. Now, Michael didn't know that when he opted out, but, you know, the reality of it is it's going to be 20 degrees or something in the 20s down there. Are you going to get targeted 8-10 times? Are you going to get targeted and have opportunities based on the conditions of the weather and all that stuff to really make plays? And are you going to get an opportunity to shine out? Is playing in the bowl game going to expose you or give you more exposure to up your opportunities moving forward, to maybe get you into another all-star game or maybe up you by a round or two, you know, draft-wise? I don't, you know, I can see where Michael would think, well, that's probably not going to happen, you know, and so with that, I see that. But, you know, you're talking about Jimmy there. There's no doubt Jimmy would play. I mean, and that would be whether he was – I'll say this, and, you know, maybe it's just because I love Jimmy, even if he was a first-round guy. That dude just wanted to play. He missed some opportunities early in his career from playing because of injury. And when he got the opportunity to play, he wanted to play. I felt that way, too. Now, I wasn't the kind of player he is, but another chance to play one more time, you know, because you don't know. The next level is not guaranteed. I do think that a guy like Eric Garrett's going to get a shot. You know, Zion Hill, that's not guaranteed. You know, he's an undersized guy. Maybe somebody brings him to camp and stuff like that. But, you know, to get a chance to play, to be with your pals, to take this year, because a lot of these guys, they didn't have to take this year, you know, but to take this year, to come here with Coach Dez and to set this thing up and then go be with your pals because you don't get it back. I mean, we were sitting there at Boris's wedding, and Julie and I were talking about it, just watching John and Jimmy and Lil Fuquay and Hunter Thibodeau and those guys getting back together and spending time together that they haven't done in 10 years, you know, and you don't get that back. And you know, for them to be able to do that one more time, and, you know, I just think it's a neat opportunity. But it is personal. It is, you know, it is a reward. They're not playing for any higher seeding, any higher ranking, anything like that. It's just a reward of a season. And then, you know, if people think that it's in their best interest to you know, to move on, then I think everybody in that locker room understands. And I don't think anybody holds anybody, you know. But you hear it in the NFL, you know, if somebody holds out, everybody says that's your money. You know, nobody's going to mess with anybody else's money. I think it's the same way in college.
Do you feel like it's that? I mean, obviously, I agree with you. It's that way today. Do you feel like that would have been the case 15 years ago? Because players used to never opt out of bowls, ever.
Well, and never had a thought of it, you know, and just didn't. I think that if somebody would have brought it to somebody's attention and said that, and the other thing is, Scott, is that bowls were so hard to get to. You know, they didn't have all these bowls. You didn't have 40 bowls. You know, you didn't have a 5-7 Rice team playing against a 6-6 Southern Miss team. You know, so these aren't looked at. But I promise you this: you know, the few opportunities that we had, not the few, we had a number of opportunities to be bowl eligible. They just didn't have that many bowls. And you know, when you got a chance to play in one of those things that was so special, they've lost their luster as far as just being special because there are so many. That doesn't mean that once you get to experience, it's not special. It's just, you know, from the outside in, it's not looked upon as near special because it truly isn't.
Gerald Broussard, our guest. All right, well, for this game, though, I know for a lot of guys, it's special. It might be their last game. It might be an opportunity for some of the young guys who still can play another game and, you know, get to keep their red shirt. I know it's a game for Coach Desimo and that staff. You win, you finish with a winning record. I mean, there's a good bit on the line in this matchup coming up Friday, Gerald. You've had some more time since we talked a few weeks ago to kind of look at Houston. This is a team, Dana Holgorsen, they want to sling it all over the place. They want to throw it a lot. They're a team that has had success in the past. They're a team that had big expectations coming into the season and frankly didn't meet them. You could say the same thing about Louisiana, right? I mean, well, you should win the West, you should do this, and they didn't meet the expectations. Not to say they don't still have a chance to finish the season on a winning note and be Independence Bowl champs, and there's still plenty to play for. But I guess what I'm getting at, Gerald, is both of these teams kind of enter this matchup with, similar paths to get here. They play different. I'm not saying it's similar styles, but as you start looking at the Houston Cougars, what in your mind is, going to be the biggest key to this game, and how do you think it's going to play out on Friday?
Well, and look, I'll say I like this. I like Houston's team. I mean, I think they got play. When you tell me if I watch the couple of the games that I've watched, I haven't watched every game, and I know they've gone through injuries. A lot of people have gone through injuries. I'm thinking there's no way these guys are 7-5. I'm thinking they're a lot better than that. Thinking about who they played against and what they do. They've got some athleticism outside. They're pretty good up front. They play with an attitude up front. I'm talking offense now. Early, they were able to run the football. They've struggled to run it a little bit because of some injuries and stuff in the back. I really like their quarterback. He's got a live arm. He can run and will run. He is an athlete and makes plays with it. He knows what they're trying to do. Defensively, they've given up a ton of points. But when you look at them one by one, they got players. And so I think that the lack of success with the team is something that I'm sure Coach Holgorsen and his staff are going to fight with in the offseason, because I think this was a year to get Cincinnati, which we saw Tulane do. And I think that they saw themselves going into the season as that team. I mean, instead of playing in the Independence Bowl, they feel like they could be playing in the Cotton Bowl in Tulane's place, and they've showed flashes of that. So, the team is talented, is athletic. I always talk about it, Scott, when we talk, if you're long and can run, you got a shot. And Scott, they're long and they can really run. And they've got a number of transfers, but when you're sitting in Harris County, and you got guys that recruit Harris County, Texas, which the population, we said this a lot of times, population of Harris County is more than the whole state of Louisiana. And that's where Houston is. And so you're sitting in Harris County, guys go all over, and then they just want to come home. At one time, going to U of H, they didn't have the facilities. They didn't have all the amenities that a lot of other places have. Well, they got them now. And so, for those guys to be able to go home, get a great experience, and to play is something that I think is neat. And he will wear out the portal, is not a doubt. But he still recruits high school big because they got such good talent around him. And that one of their receivers was a 4-star guy that stayed home out of high school. But now you look at it, and for them to be playing against the Cajuns, and look, not that the Cajuns is not the problem. It's just that the bowl, compared to what they thought, I'm sure they're a little disappointed with that. Now they're going to be excited to play in it because they want to keep playing, and he wants his quarterback to get more exposure. Now it's going to be tough to do with the conditions, but he's going to try and do it. And I'm just talking about them in general now. But I do think that they anticipated bigger things out of the season. But the same thing you said about Coach Dez and his staff. It is another chance to play. It's another chance to kind of get a good taste in their mouth going into the off season, to help them through a lot of the stuff, to reward the guys who have been there. When I say what I say about there's not as much excitement, that has nothing to do. That's just in general. That has nothing to do with the individual bowls itself. I think those guys that get to do it are doing it and excited about doing it and excited about an opportunity. And I think that U of H is that way now, albeit disappointed that they didn't have. They won't be disappointed this week. When they go back through and start doing their evaluation of the season, start doing their evaluation, they'll review every game and every game plan and go through every player and every position. Then they'll see missed opportunities and disappointment. But they'll get over it quick, get in the spring ball, and get ready for another season as they move up into Power 5. And so it's an opportunity for them to do that kind of stuff. I think with the Cajuns, we know what the Cajuns have gone through. Just fighting through this year, starting out with a little promise and having that bad spell in there, then kind of rebounding a little bit and going through some quarterbacks. It's just been it has not been a model of consistency by any stretch, but that's what you're trying to build. And Coach Dez and his guys are there. They know the players. They're going to keep fighting to do the right thing there. And I think it was big to go to get a bowl at Texas State on the road, to go get it and then do it and have this opportunity to play against a good football team. I wish it was inside. And look, the only reason I wish it was inside because it's going to be in the 20s with the wind.
That's my next question there, Gerald. We got you just for a few more minutes, but it's going to be in the teens, but then when you factor in the feels like temperature and the wind chill and everything else, we're down in single digits. Neither of these teams, certainly the Cajuns, I don't know all of Houston's schedule. Neither of these teams have played in this kind of weather this season.
No, nobody has.
What's the on-field impact for these two teams based on their style of play, and how much more difficult is it to sling it around when it's freezing, literally freezing outside?
No, it's hard. It's very hard. It's like throwing a brick, and it's sharp, and it gets harder as the game goes on. When they first start, the balls won't be as exposed to the conditions as they will be towards the end. And look, nobody likes it. Everybody talks about toughing out the condition. Nobody likes it. Poor Cody, my godchild, I love him to death. He's going to be on the sideline. I told him if I was him, I'd quit for a day. Just a day. I mean, want to come back, but I'd quit for a day. No way. And I've been in that stuff. Last time I was in that stadium, Cody was playing for Acadiana High School. And it was cold then. And then, I've been in DeKalb, Illinois, and it was negative wind chill down there. And Scott, it's miserable. Now, you can say all you want about, the players on the field won't feel it. They can lather it up. You feel it. I'm telling you, you feel it. You feel it the whole time. But, you fight through it. It's just something you got to deal with, and you fight through it and you go play. But it's going to affect the game, and it's going to affect your opportunities to move the football there. And it's going to be harder to execute simply because of the conditions and the surroundings that you have. The guys up north kind of deal with it. They get used to it, but they don't like it. Nobody likes it. It's kind of like us when it's hot and humid and it's 100. Those couple games we had down in Cajun Field a few years back where we had to get Ricky Bustle to change his clothes and give the coach an idea at half, just to survive the game and stuff like that. And the next week we're supposed to play another 1:00 game. They moved the game. I mean, they didn't. I remember going to Arkansas. And our shoes melting to the turf. Scott, that's not, nobody likes that.
But you're right. You're right. And yet, Gerald, I mean, let's be real. Whenever, the Cajuns have that kind of heat and there's a team from up north that comes down for an early season game, everybody talks about the advantage. The advantage is true. Doesn't mean the other team likes it. And this matchup Friday, neither team has an advantage. It's kind of like, both of these teams don't really like this weather, despite what they're saying. You got to be tough. You got to do this. Yeah, they probably prefer to play in a dome, but they won't. It's going to be cold, and undoubtedly, it's going to have an impact on this game. I mean, it just is. Yeah. And I think it has. Well, I think you have to plan. I think you have to game plan around that a little bit. I don't think you can go in and say we're just going to do what we always do.
No. Yeah, you got to game plan a lot of it. Because it is the reality of it is it's the reality, and you're not dealing with one team from the north and one team from the south having to deal with the condition. You're dealing with two teams from the south that don't know, but you know what it is? It's a chance to make a great memory, and we'll be talking about it hopefully in a few years. And hey, you remember when the Cajuns and the Cougars matched up in Houston, and we didn't think they'd be able to move the football, and the game was 49-52, and the Cajuns beat them? How neat was that? Or you remember when the Cajuns had to fake a punt in DeKalb, Illinois to go win the game just by, I think, 3.4 points, something like that, because nobody could move the football because, they would kick the ball through the uprights and the wind would blow it back on the field. How neat was that? It's stories. That's what it's all about.
Gerald's one of the best storytellers out there. Appreciate you joining me all season, Gerald. It's been fun. The Lions are on a winning, they're in the playoff hunt. We didn't get to talk NFL today, but shout out Dan Campbell and the crew and what they're doing up there. I'll be honest, when I told folks, hey, take the over on 6.5 wins when they were 1-6, I was feeling kind of bad, but 7-7 in the playoff hunt. How about it, man? Never give up. With that, Gerald, man, I appreciate it. Enjoy the game Friday. I know Jay typically leaves the press box windows open. He has made it abundantly clear that will not be the case this Friday. You guys enjoy the call. We'll be listening. And to you and your family, my friend, Merry Christmas.
Same to you, and much love and respect. Hey, I appreciate you, pal.